All right, welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a little bit of a Clair Obscur Expedition 33 bosses tier list, going through all the primary main bosses in the story, Act 3, and beyond experience, and we're going to be ranking them on criteria of fun but fair, presentation, replayability, and then just overall extra just wow factor, the wow bit. As you can see already in the tier list, I have made some unique ranks here. We've got chromatic tier for all those chromatic bosses that there's just so many of them. I couldn't be bothered to rank all of them, so we're going to leave them there. And then there's the gestural tier for the lovely gestrals from the multiple arenas that you duel. That all they get their special spot there. But as you'll see, there is no D tier because there's not really any D tier bosses in this game. Pretty much every single boss in this category has a net neutral already, just looking at it as far as my ranking goes. So the way this works, anytime you get a positive in one of the three categories, being fun but fair, like the gameplay, presentation, so like the music, the setting, the design of the boss, the overall look and feel of it in that regard. And then also the replayability, the desire I have to go back and fight the boss again with a different build, or just experiencing it again in New Game Plus. That being said, if you get 3 points, 1 point will get you to B tier, 2 points will get you to A tier, and 3 points will get you to S tier. I also have a tier here for peak, which is that it exceeds expectations above and beyond on all three categories mentioned thus far, to where it would break beyond the confines of this tier list, and thus it will go into peak tier. So, that being said, out the gate, I do need to mention that some of these chromatics were quite fun. Very fun. In fact, Clair Obscur, extremely fun. But still, a chromatic. They end up playing so many of them that point of ranking them would be a bit null. And then also the fact that the Endless Tower means that I've played a bunch of these chromatic bosses. I've fought against them so many times that the tier list doesn't necessarily work as well for them here. They are at the bottom of the tier list. That does not mean that I dislike the bosses or find them not that fun or engaging. But yes, I have brought everyone up here into C tiers for your viewing pleasure to see the order in which I will be doing them, which is approximately the order I fought them in game. So let's jump right into it with the Eveque, the first boss that you get to fight with a proper feeling of scale. Brings the shield mechanic into things. It has a nice diverse setup between spell attacks and melee attacks. The damage for this boss is pretty commendable for playing on expert, and yes, all of this is going to be based on my experience playing them on expert, and with some of them also being adjusted with health and damage stuff so that I got as close as possible to the premium boss experience there. But the Eveque, I would say, has a very simple gameplay loop. I love the sound cues for a lot of their moves. The presentation with the music is pretty good, and replayability is neutral, so I think this is just an easy B tier boss. Nothing too spectacular other than just, it's a dope looking boss. And I love the glowing core in the middle as like a weak point to focus on there as well. And I remember that the shield mechanic made it pretty intense when they were counting down to their ultimate move. Now moving on to Goblu. Goblu probably immediately goes at least into A tier for their flower mechanic, and then their jumping attacks being like relatively easy to parry for the most part. But the flowers building this, again, like this ticking time bomb of you have to find some way to manage incoming damage buffs or whether you care more about them not scaling damage, but just letting them have a shield here or there. But obviously the standout aspect of this boss is the presentation. The look of the boss is very eerie and chilling, and the cutscene that leads into it is also very mysterious and very esoteric and strange. But the music is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And then replayability is really fun because you can intentionally let Goblu consume one flower so that it basically wastes its turn getting just a shield out of it. I think this boss does a really good job of also teaching you AP management in a really fun way as well. So I would say replayability is just barely there. I would say that presentation is above and beyond. And then gameplay is fun but fair. I actually think Goblu might be the first S tier boss and probably on the middle end of S tier. I would say Goblu is a very strong early boss here. Now I put the Bourgeon in here because it's a boss that had a very specific mechanic in it that I generally don't like, which is taking away a party member in its Vor move. It's also entirely random, so I would say generally speaking that the replayability aspect of it is basically a negative. But despite that, the fun but fair aspects of it are just barely neutral. And then the actual design of it and music that it has in the underwater zone and stuff, and then the way that it slams its head and the animation as it's trailing with the water and everything, I think Edgethu's one I'm just up to a C tier. This was a fun kind of shocking boss to have right on the side of things in the very earlier parts of the game, to just kind of go whoa, right, this game can scare you a little bit. And then next, we have the ultimate Sakapate. Probably one of the goofiest and funniest design bosses in the game. Very much capturing the whimsy of this fantastical setting. So easily a plus for presentation. Music, of course, with the gesturals is always a joy and fun. But this boss is actually pretty tough on Expert. This one has some pretty tough moves that you have to learn how to deal with. As far as replayability, I would say it's a neutral. So it's not anything spectacular in that regard. But there are a lot of fun little weaknesses and stuff to figure out how to navigate the boss as well. So I think it does edge out into A tier. Francois, this is so funny. The idea that Francois is basically a tutorial boss to kind of just teach you that sometimes there's going to be a big attack coming, and it's okay that you don't have to parry because dodging is easier than parrying, and you might just die no matter what your health is to that big attack that's coming. Yeah, the strongest ice attack ever. So is it peak? I mean, yeah, it's absolutely peak. No, but seriously, Francois is just a silly, fun boss in a lot of ways. It doesn't really have anything going for it. It's barely a boss. It kind of gets story tiered. We'll put our quirky turtle neighbor here. Lampmaster might actually be the fastest immediate S tier boss. I think it is better than Goblu by a little bit. Lampmaster's music, and this might actually be because I've now refought Lampmaster so many times. Every single time I get to fight Lampmaster, I am so excited. I think that replayability for Lampmaster exceeds above and beyond. I think presentation is above and beyond. I think the only thing that is holding it back is the gameplay aspects of it are just great. They're not exceeding above and beyond with regards to the experience there, but it is really close to, I would say, peak boss. I think the only thing that might be a bit of a unique thing with this, I will double check to make sure that I am not mixing up mechanics here, but it does have some very unique moves that can proc status effects on you. Yeah, it can give you the dizzy status effect. I would say this is a nice boss to kind of give you a test to how well you've been integrating with the game's systems. Yeah, is it peak? No, it's close, but it's not exactly there. But potentially one of my favorite, not really speaking bosses in the game. Dualliste is above and beyond on every single metric. No question. Dualliste has the incredible replayability in that the variety of moves and the variety of responses you have to give within some of those combos, with also the phenomenal music presentation, especially in the actual story part for it, even more so than the Lampmaster, this being the true test of whether you're ready to engage with every mechanic that you've got, in addition to the chromatic counters that are presented with this boss being kind of the main tutorial for that. This boss being also a Pontiff Sulivan reference of Dark Souls 3 is phenomenal, but this boss was so good. People specifically call this the Elden Ring, the Dark Souls reference boss, the other game with peak boss design. This is where it's at. This is the clip you send to your friends to be like, you need to play this game. On the sillier side of things, Monoco is a boss in the game. You could theoretically lose to Monoco, but we're all here for the bow wow 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 wow. So Monoco gets B tier, I would say, immediately for the above and beyond just jazz, silly music. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Does he go into gestural tier? Maybe he should, because, that's basically all he's got going for him. In fact, I kind of feel like he and the, what is this? The Stalakt should go into gestural tier. They're really fun, but he's basically just there just to kind of teach you some stuff. I think B tier is fine. Otherwise, yeah, we could put him. Oh, no, let's put him. He's leading the pack in the gestural tier, and we'll put the Stalakt there as well as just a tutorial boss. No, we'll put it in C tier. Okay, now going to a boss that I genuinely just think is potentially one of the best, but it's one of the coolest scale bosses. We are talking about Visages. The moves that this boss does with the scale of things immediately puts it into at least B tier for presentation. But it's the variety of moves, the overall just grandiose nature, setting up what will be one of the peak bosses here with another boss that fights you from a very high place, gives it definitely a plus for replayability. But I think it's not so crazy, I would say, positive in the gameplay side of things. I think it could be a little bit better, so I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. Mask Keeper is one of the scarier bosses, I would say, in terms of their look and vibe and their humanoid, terrifying appearance here. Definitely gives them a plus for presentation. Fun but fair aspects of it is definitely there. And replayabilities, I would say, about a little bit better than Visages. So I would also put this probably at low S tier. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's close to the Dualliste in terms of the large humanoid with many blades freaking you out with the speed and terrifying nature of their rapid moves. But the Mask Keeper was very up there for me. And then just switching over to another Axons area, we have Tisseur. This is an optional boss that has a really cool weaving technique, and also has an important item to set up the Sirene fight to be much easier. I like that this boss is kind of minding its own business, just doing work, and you kind of coming in to kill it kind of asks the question a little bit of, wait, should we be doing this? But again, scale, music, everything, definitely B tier, but I don't think it goes really beyond B tier. I think the replayability is neutral. And I think that a lot of the gameplay stuff is pretty neutral, all things considered. So I think it just goes into a mid B tier. The Glissando. This is an interesting boss. I love the fact that it seems like it's a creature, but it's also like hollow. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't think the presentation of this one is that interesting. I think it's kind of neutral. I think that replayability is definitely not bad, but it's not great. I would say this is another C tier, but it's definitely like the highest C tier. Sirene, on the other hand, immediately like top 3 S tier, I would say. Music for this one's incredible. The dialogue coming from them is fantastic. Music, the changing of the flow of things, the scale, the different moves, the idea that you can prep for this boss fight by beating Tisseur, the idea that this, exactly, one gamer. The fact that this is not kind of the final boss of Act 2 is kind of shocking, given who this is modeled after as an Axon. I think it just is barely below the Lampmaster for me because the replayability factor is not as high, but I would love to see, honestly, how difficult this fight would be, and maybe whether or not this fight would go lower if I wasn't immune to Charm. But I think in a lot of ways that would have lowered my ranking for me if I was having to deal with the charm effect constantly going off. I mean, obviously, just parry it. So now we've got some side bosses here. In fact, speaking of side bosses, we should probably just put Gross Tete here because this is the perfect time to bring them up here. So Gross Tete is one of the dumbest and funniest bosses in the whole game. And weirdly enough, the gameplay in every way, shape, and manner would generally be like the most flat, neutral. There's nothing special to say here. The replayability is basically like negative. But the idea that this guy just keeps banging his head while you've got this amazing music going on that they use in a couple bosses immediately saves it from being like not great. And I kind of want to break my rules of my tier list, but honestly, Gross Tete is the weirdest, funniest boss. So it technically should be like the top of C tier, but it's just so funny that they even made this boss at all. He's iconic, absolutely. Ice Boy, the Gargante. The Gargante is a boss that forces you to use a lot of elemental manipulation and kind of adjust for status effects and stuff. And I think that that's both a positive and a negative. I think that replayability is kind of a neutral, maybe even a negative. I would say this is one, though, where the fun but fair aspects of it, I think, actually works just enough so that I actually enjoy the gameplay of this. Despite all the status effect stuff, it makes the attacks all feel like it being a very important choice to making sure that I definitely do not get hit by the freeze beams and stuff. So maybe I could dodge just to make sure I'm definitely not going to get hit by it. But then the way in which you exploit the weaknesses and trigger it shifting forms, I actually really like. So I would say that this is another high C tier boss where the presentation was also pretty neutral, but I enjoyed it nonetheless, but not enough to go out of C tier. The Scavenger. This was a boss I fought, I think, a little bit early, and this is probably one of the weirdest bosses in the game, in that it feels like it should be connected more to the story, but it's just off the side in this very strange area, and it has like one of the coolest like phase changes in a way that could have been annoying, but it's actually really awesome. I think this has probably some of the best gameplay of the Act 2 bosses. And then its moves are very different. I also had a lot of fun time like struggling with this because I used Ciel, and Ciel was basically unable to do damage to this boss. So Ciel ended up kind of transitioning into more of a support role. And it was fun to kind of build around this boss because I think I did it, again, too early. So I had to strategize quite a bit and ended up kind of getting rewarded for it with a really fun overall experience there. Don't worry, everything in C tier is not ranked necessarily. They're only ranked so far is that in that right here. Everything from here onward is not even started yet. So I think, honestly, this boss, crazy as it seems, jumps immediately into like the lowest S tier. Replayability is probably the thing that I'm still very positive on, but I'm not as crazy about compared to the other two parts with the presentation and the gameplay. Okay, so now we're just straight to peak. Debatably tied for the best boss in the game, in my opinion. I think that Act 2 Renoir might be tied with the Dualliste for my favorite boss in the game. Yeah, I don't think it's clear which of them is better to me. Presentation is everything here. In the phase change, in the music, in the environment, in him being the gateway boss. I could gush so much about this boss. I would be absolutely happy putting him number 1 or Dualliste number 1. I think we'll put him here because his face is so iconic. Him being our rival, our foil, our like spooky, boogeyman in the night that's come and just terrified us constantly. Getting to fight him, go all out, and have him put every single trick that he's shown us before on full display and more with the Phase 2 change. This is the cream of the crop with regards to general boss design. And then also the idea that the simple humanoid boss with the small scale, visual side of things still gets me like that is just so good. Another boss that I would say, the Paintress, is definitely S tier, but I think that what creeps it into peak for me is the idea that this is the final difficult, if you will, boss in the game. Spectacle is through the roof, absolutely. Replayability is very much there, and I'm going to get into why. The gameplay, fun but fair aspects of it, or like difficult but fair, or exciting and challenging but fair, definitely puts it up there. But to me, I think it might be only the top of S tier because this is the boss where you don't necessarily have as much build, variety, expression, or what have you, to where this is probably like a minor critique. The balance of the game kind of gets shattered in Act 3, but with the Paintress, this is the last opportunity you have to basically just get good, and you can't outbuild the bosses, really. I think it gets like both a very strong above and beyond positive for presentation and replayability. No, it goes up here too. It's also peak. I think it's just that it's the lowest peak of all of the bosses that will end up here. Incredible stuff. Sprong. This fucking boss, cheater. This is a boss that basically is there for people that are playing the game through a second time and know exactly like what Sprong offers them. But otherwise, this is a very difficult, chunky boss that you are not really meant to fight until Act 3. But someone who's good at the game could definitely beat this boss before Act 2, get the cheater picto, and just face roll the rest of the game much earlier because Sprong's moves are deterministic. They do not change their order. So replayability, I would say, is neutral. Difficulty, fun but fair, I would say it's good. And I would say the presentation, it still has the same music that the Gross Tete has and a couple other bosses. So definitely a positive there. I would say Sprong goes into mid A tier, but I think the fun part about this is that the fight is actually like exceptionally fair and fun because you could just parry this boss into oblivion and get your sweet dope break the game rewards for it. Yeah, let's do Alicia. Alicia is a controversial boss for me. I think that it's a very fun presentation duel with the music and everything. I think that the gameplay of this is overall kind of neutral, and I would say also the replayability is also pretty neutral. This is a weird boss that you're either going to extremely struggle on because it's a solo fight, but also the moves that she does are kind of weird to defend against. So I'm not excited to go and duel them again. So I would say that this is a very middle B boss fight, which is kind of sad because I feel like this game has a lot of amazing characters. A lot of the best characters are up here with regards to their boss fights. Whereas for her, it's like, oh, cool, you one-shot her accidentally. Or, oh, she one-shot you accidentally. And then it's just, yeah, it's over. Okay, so then we have our chromatic glissando, which I only put up here, even though it is a chromatic, because I wanted to mention it in the story side of things. But I think this is an example of one that it doesn't even go into C tier. If there is a reason to put something into chromatic tier intentionally, I think this is the boss that I would do this for. This is a pretty nothing burger side of a boss comparatively to the glissando that's here. So I would genuinely just throw it back down into the chromatic tier. Just wanted to start it up here so that I could tell you why I brought it down here, even though it is kind of in the story stuff here. So then we have creation, which I love these two bosses here. I'm going to rate them basically the same, but the moves being less intense damage-wise and stuff, I think, and also the scale and the setting of this one being one that I saw after this one kind of kills the presentation side of things a little bit. That being said, it's still a positive on the presentation, but it almost put it to a neutral for me. But it's definitely the one that I have like no excitement of replaying because I could just replay this one instead. So I think that this is probably like low B tier. This is peak though. I would say that the final story boss, there is a level that this game broke with regards to presentation for this boss fight. And it sucks that a lot of people probably just one-shot the boss and never saw a lot of the mechanics here. But through some chicanery, which, yes, that does need to be factored in here. We did a lot to make sure that we could balance this properly. So I would put the fun but fair aspect side of things incumbent upon you making sure you fight this boss at the appropriate time, or maybe finagling with the boss's health and your damage output. But that being said, this is the culmination of everything that you've been working toward, and it absolutely delivers. All the axons helping in the fight, all the ridiculous flying moves that he does, the painting coming down, the way that the buffs come in this like just impending doom way, and that he's pulling all of the efforts that he's built up over these years to try and stop you, to the point where you almost start to realize, wait, are we the villains and is he the hero? There's so much to be said about this boss fight from the story side of things, but the actual gameplay with regards to the move types and stuff go up there with the Dualliste side of things. But the only negative that I would say makes him a little bit lower than my favorite bosses is that because of some of the shenanigans involved with this there, and then maybe even just the length of the fight, that you'd want it to have in order to make sure you don't just one-shot the boss, I'd say replayability is not as high as these ones here. But yeah, slightly above the Paintress in regards to the gameplay side of things. Yeah, maybe just gameplay. Because the Paintress has some interesting like camera angles that make it a little bit tricky. Let's go. I think I did Golgra much later, but let's do Golgra now. Golgra being you are going to be challenged by this boss, like a whole lot. This is going to be a very difficult wall that you will crest at some point. But for now, come back later when you're strong enough. I never felt like I was strong enough fully for Golgra until much, much, much later in the game. Part of that is because it's a duel. You have to duel her, but there are a lot of other places that you fight her to practice against her. And in that respect, it was always fun to replay the Golgra fights through like slightly lower difficulty and different environments. I got very comfortable with her moves because of this, so I think that the fun but fair aspect of it is there. I think this is, she hits all the metrics and it's another S tier boss. I just don't think she goes that high because maybe because there's something about the times where when we're fighting, you're either getting hit for all your health damage wise and you're just dead, or no, I think it's because it's just that it's a solo fight. It kind of holds back a lot of the gameplay side of things a little bit there. Clea is also a very strange boss. This is one where I put Clea at ×2 health, but I did originally put her at ×5, and that was really tough. Learning the parry patterns for all the Nevron summon attacks was difficult, like very difficult. I would say, though, that this boss does have a little bit of the Millennia issue where the self-healing does make it a little bit less fair than I would like. So I don't think it can be S tier. Replayability, I think, is there, though, because there's some fun, consistent optimization that you can get because there's so many different types of moves that Clea's summons use for you. So I think it goes into A tier. Clea weirdly goes to the top. Yeah, let's go there. I think that the presentation is really good, but it's not as epic or grand of scale as Visages was. Yeah, I don't think the healing was as annoying. I just don't think it deserves a full merit point on the gameplay side of things. Now let's do our resident dragon here. What are they called? The Serpenphare. Yeah, the Serpenphare. This is a weird puzzle boss. The opportunity to just get good and parry it is absolutely there. But I had a lot of fun kind of retooling my party to kind of gimmick the gimmick boss in a way. And that was kind of fun. So the replay side of things is definitely there because there's a lot of really interesting ways that you could engage with this boss outside of just get good and parry. Presentation wise, this is a very, very cool, epic boss. Music's decently good. I think it definitely goes up to A tier. I would say that the fun but fair aspects of it might not be fully there. I think it's the same thing with Clea. I think this boss goes actually right next to Clea. I think that the execution of this boss leaves a little bit to be desired from just the massive health pool and kind of the tedium, basically, of fighting them. It's just not, it's fair, but I just don't think it's as fun as it could be. And then this is kind of a random boss to throw up here just because it's a unique encounter. But this is End of the Endless Tower boss where you get to fight the reunited lovers, painted love encounter of the two of them working together. And while they don't have their own health bars, which I get is thematically appropriate, they do share one. I wish they did have their own health bars because it would be fun to see them maybe like enrage if you kill one before you kill the other. As it was, I just focus fired one of them and the fight was pretty much over. I think that this boss has not anything crazy in the replay side of things. It could be fun to replay with giving them like ×10 health and let them go through all their moves and stuff. But otherwise, it's effectively just the same of these two bosses put together. And while these two are both peak individually, it also matters because of where they are in the game. Whereas these two together, I think that The gameplay of it is fun and fair. Presentation of it is good. But I do not think that this is peak boss. I don't even think this is S tier. I would put this boss directly below Visages as well. Creation. This is the chromatic that in a lot of ways I think deserves its own special place. Probably one of the most terrifying and epic bosses in the game in terms of presentation. So damn cool. So eerie and terrifying. It almost doesn't even look like something that's, created in this world. Like it feels like something that was ripped from another dimension. So above and beyond presentation, difficulty and gameplay and fun but fair aspects of it is definitely there. I think this boss goes not necessarily into S tier because of the replayability factor, but I think it definitely goes above Sprong in the ultimate Sakapate, maybe even above Serpenphare. So yeah, we'll put them right here. Damn, above Clea. Oh, the Painted Love. Yeah, I would say just barely above Clea. They're basically tied with them. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then the GOAT. Y'all were basically here just for this, right? So Simon, our resident super boss, most difficult fight by a overwhelming margin that I somehow beat in like 8 tries, like 7 tries or something. I don't know what it was. I love the idea of coming back to this game to fight this boss over and over and over again. So immediately above and beyond in the replayability factor. Presentation, immediately above and beyond. A little bit more than 7 to 8. Okay, maybe more like 15. Yeah, I'll have to go back and check because I actually don't remember as many. But yeah, it was just really funny to put on the fueling break with then the break upon death Picto, and boss just died. Burn, go burr, I guess. But it is definitely an S tier boss. I think the tough thing for me is that there's some aspects of the gameplay that are a little bit inconsistent and also ones that make it feel like you're not really winning as much as you are getting lucky with RNG. So there's some times where the order with which Simon sets people's health to 1, with which his maybe it's just his speed is a little bit inconsistent and stuff as well, but he'll take sometimes like 3 turns or sometimes he'll take 1 or 2. Obviously, that's going to be depending on your build and what have you, but I don't know if he goes into peak necessarily. He probably does. I didn't even see phase 3, apparently. I just had like so much burn on him, he just died. The thing that I would say is the best in the gameplay side of things is the idea that the moves don't really change as much as that they get more actions required in order for you to dodge or parry in the middle of them. So it's like he's dropping off global cooldowns right in the same tempo as the other move, but instead of it being single time, it's double time. So that side of things I think is really cool because then it makes it fun to learn his moves as he gets faster. It's still above and beyond, so it's still peak. I feel like because of a lot of the story implications of these bosses, it doesn't go all the way to the top or even necessarily that far. If I was to critique Simon in any way, it's that there's certain things about the way that this game is balanced and designed that I think discourages you from actually playing Simon straight, if that makes sense. Like actually engaging with the boss directly. It feels like the best way to just win the fight is not actually to interact with any of the mechanics in the slightest bit. It's like the boss is so difficult that people would rather skip most of the boss's stuff than actually engage with it. And I tried to do that. Yeah, there's just certain Pictos, there's certain abilities in this game that are also just as busted as he is, that kind of basically says that Simon can be as hard as you want him to be, which is nice. But I also think that there's something to be said for maybe having like the phase changes be their own different health bars, so he gets kind of an intro to kind of jump in with like, oh, it's a phase change. Here's the effects of what's going on. Now he does that from phase 1 to 2, which is cool. But he does not do that, apparently, from phase 2 to 3. If he does, I mean, I could be wrong. If he does, that's awesome. I think it would have been cool to have it where it's more like the Lampmaster and the other story bosses where you get them down to the 1% cutscene plays and you initiate everything there in that regard. He is the skill ceiling if you're looking at it from the devs asking you to play it normally. Yes, that is absolutely right. There is definitely no other boss in here that is a skill ceiling in that regard. Is there anything I'd want to change in this? No. Yeah, so this is my tier list for the Expedition 33 main bosses. I did not really rank most, if not all, of the chromatics. There would be basically a lot more things in C tier and B tier. The most notable chromatics that I did not give attention to are these 4 at the top here. These 4 at the top were very unique, very fun, but probably don't deserve as much of their ranking there. If I was to sort some of them, it would probably get into the weeds a little bit. I sorted them mostly by their order a little bit in the first half here, and then I just stacked all the Eveques next to each other. Main thing I would say is that I did put these 4 as my favorite chromatics, and thus I put them at the top. Mostly because these were all the most difficult ones that I actually spent the most time trying to figure out how to beat and enjoyed the time trying to figure out how to beat them with their difficulty. What are your least favorite chromatics? Oh gosh, I don't know. The flying ones? Yeah, I don't think there's any of these that I hate. It's just that a lot of them are just mediocre. I do like more so the idea that there are some chromatics on here that are so easy to parry now that if you go back and play the game again, like the Chromatic Abest, you could just get them done really early and get crazy upgrades for it. Some of these chromatics, though, are holding incredibly strong Pictos, and it does make you feel like you kind of have to go fight them, especially if we're going to play another playthrough. Like this one has an extremely important Picto. Found out that the electric Eveque has an important Picto. Our masks or crows flying guy, that's not him. So here somewhere. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you would have put as your top 5 bosses. These are mine right here, with these bosses very close behind. What do you think are my hot or spicy takes that maybe should not have been that high or should not have been that low? Take care, y'all, and yeah, get excited for Silksong coming very soon. All right, bye.